That again, and then put the scope in a neutral position. Make sure you're comfortable. Have a look, see where the image is. I'm just looking at this. That's fine. Don't over tighten these because they'll split. Now, it's okay, my friend, because when I go to ITU, that's how we scope over the shoulder. So we come round anti-clockwise. Would you touch? What do you want to do? Anybody? Tell me. Pull back. Okay, I'll pull back. Talk. Okay, I'm talking. How you doing? Nice day. Okay, so I'm being very facetious. I'm being very picky, and I'm going to say, tell me what to do. All right, I'm withdrawing. Inflate. Oh, inflate. Okay. Clockwise. Big wheel back. Okay. Little wheel stayed neutral so far. Advance. Now, watch how I advance. Advance. How quick did I advance? Slow. Anti-clockwise. Ever so slowly. The fold is just appearing. Keep it in a straight line. Big wheel back. Clockwise as we go forward. Let the clockwise come forward. The scope is now coming round to meet me. As the scope comes round, big wheel back, anti-clockwise, clockwise, and just let the scope just sit and relax. It won't happen to you when you're doing this because you won't have this in front of you like so. Now, when you've gone forward, you stretch the bowel in front of you. I've gone forward by 20 centimetres. Everybody happy? What would you do now?
If there is no pain and the patient is comfortable, you need nothing else. The scope is going.
Okay. So what we've got is 5 different ways of progressing. Okay. Me myself, I look at it and I do the one that no one's mentioned. No. I pull it back. And then I go forward. Now I go clockwise. Then I go forward. Okay. So we've got, and there is no right, there is no wrong. And please feel free because no one is going to say anything, no one's going to laugh at you. Advancing is not the right thing, and I'll show you why in a moment. What you said, which was anti-clockwise talk, again, in my opinion, is not the right thing, but I'll show you why as well, because it ends up with the same result. Okay. Advancing, I would have caught the fold, and it would have been an issue. Clockwise talk was too far to travel round, and that would have been an issue. Someone said use the wheels. I don't like to use the little wheel too early on because it introduces looping, so that would have been an issue. And then someone said put more air in, and that blows the bowel up and pushes you back anyway. Whatever you do, there is more than what we're trying to demonstrate. There is more than one way of progressing. Because I do it my way isn't the way that Saad would do it, isn't the way that Wakar would do it, but principally, when I show you why I did it, it will actually set you up to actually make better and a little bit more comfortable. So by advancing, what you would have done is increase the sigmoid loop, the apex of the scope. Even though the scope's going forward, and this, if you actually think that that's where the target is, the scope's going forward, the apex, more scope's going in, but the tip's going forward, and that is what's causing the pain, and that's what happens. In putting the clockwise torque on, I already had a little bit of a apex loop in it, or not a loop, but an apex in it, and as I then put the torque on, it stretches the bowel as it comes down. So that's pulling on the mesentery, so that introduces discomfort. In pulling back, I pulled the scope back, and that straightened it. And I slowly adjusted the position. Now if you look at the screen, if we all look at the screen, I've got the scope here against my abdomen, and if I actually step back and then do the same thing, you'll see that it moves again. Okay. The other thing that's most important, can you see how the scope is in relation to the anus? If I hold that with the 50 pointing to me as it is, watch the torque on the scope. Did you see that? And I let it relax. Do you see it? So the most important thing is going back. It gives you more maneuverability by keeping the scope straight. Okay? So we've got this. What are we going to do now? Move forward? Move forward? Everybody? Okay, I'm going to upset you. Pull back. Right? Then go forward. Now we've got here, all I'm doing is big wheel forward, going under the fold. What am I going to do? Pull back. As I come back. How much scope did I just take out? Right, everybody made the cardinal sin. Everybody, even my friends back there. We're all staring at this. The person's here, the screen is there. Where is the action? Is the action on there or is the action down here? Right. So what I'm doing here is happening on there. So what we must do when we're actually doing something, before we put an action to see what the reaction is to assess. Okay, so we look at what we've got. So stop, look at what we've got, and then say, right, let's do it. So we pull back, then we go forward. Now we've gone round. Now the interesting thing is, we're still at 40 centimetres. A moment ago we were at 40 centimetres, but we've travelled further along with the scope. Okay? Keep the scope there and draw back. Now it's just gripping a little bit on the anus, and that's on the actual mannequin itself. So if I actually just release that and put a little bit of gel on, it'll be a bit more easier then to introduce. The reason why I don't put too much on is because your cells will, you'll find that you'll think, oh my word, and now it's actually better. Right? You wouldn't do that in real life, by the way. You wouldn't get the scope and do this. Or would you? How many people have seen colonoscopists do this? You've seen it. Why did he do it? Okay. I'll tell you why they do it. Why did he do it? Have a feel? That?
Relaxing the anal tone. Relaxing the anal tone, basically. And you can feel it in the scope, whether it's
okay.
moving or not. If the tip is moving freely, then you know it's not moving.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you why they do it. A lot of them do it because they believe it concertinas the bowel on the scope. Okay. I'll tell you my answer to it. Garbage. Right. It's garbage because doing that does nothing. It doesn't allow the bowel to shuffle along the scope. It doesn't allow anything. All it does is make you think I'm doing something. Right. So when I see somebody do this, what are you doing? So all I do then is ask them to draw the scope back. Now we've gone forward. Now, if we look at the scope, how far in have we got the scope? 50, 45, 40 centimetres. And where do you think we are?
Ascending, you're in descending.
Any advance? Okay. Now the reason is that we've kept the scope straight. We've straightened out the sigmoid. We're here. Alright. And I know you can do it. I can reach the cecum with 60 centimetres of scope. And that's just being fancy. But it's not for any other reason. If you were working with me, I will show you how to do all this, and then that's fine. But then I've moved the goalpost. There's no point in me doing this all the time to you. It's like playing golf. Now Sard says he's not very good, but I know secretly he's absolutely brilliant, because there's no way that man isn't good at everything that he puts his mind to. That's how I believe. So I think he's absolutely brilliant, and he's sneaky, and he'll have a bet. That's what I think he is. Now, there's no way he's going to do this. But the most important thing when you're going to do something, and I'd play a game of golf, and should I play back, or should I play so good that I put him on? Is he that? is the chap I'm playing with needs encouragement, and that's how I play with colonoscopy. Yes, we are going to be successful, but the most important thing is to show you what's attainable, but not to put it out of your reach. And that's what the idea of this course is, to show you what's attainable. Now, we've got the scope, we're in mid-transverse. What are we going to do?
Pull back.
Ah, all right, we're getting there. Why talk? Do we need any talk? Just be, now, here comes another one. Because we ask you a question.
Why would you pull back when you've already straightened it and pulled back? Just out of...
The interesting thing is as you pull back, it just takes and keeps the scope straight. Yes, my friend.
It brings the hepatic flexure closer to the...
Does it?
What my point was different. I was just simply saying when you've actually gone in, straighten it, then why pull back before moving? You've already done that. You're just showing it to...
Oh, the reason why I'm pulling back...
Just
What did I do to pull the splenic flexure down? I'll answer Saad's question in a second. So what did I do to pull that down?
decrease the torque.
No, what I actually did, if you heard that noise,
You suck it.
suck, right? And then pull back. How much scope have we got in? 40 centimetres. Suck, draw back, suck, suck even more, draw back. How much scope have we got in? 40 centimetres. What happens is that drawing back allows the bowel to relax on the scope. It's a bit like a glove. We look at this glove, and this glove looks quite small. But if I could fill this glove with a lot of air, and it stretches away, I would then have a distance to go. I draw the scope back, I allow it to sit there, but I then draw the air down, and it allows the bowel then to come down and sit over itself. As we've shown, distally, the colon itself blows up, and as it comes back, it sits over the tip of the scope. Don't get caught up with this. This is just a demonstration of how I break it down. So in colonoscopy, I'll look at where your fingers are. How much have I actually kept my finger over the air button? Very little. How much have I put over the suction? Very little.
So Paul, would it be right to say that when you've actually reached a spot, wherever,
Yeah.
You always make sure you pull it back a little bit to see if there's any room for coming back.
Yeah.
You suck the air out. Make sure
It's-
you're straight and then move again.
And the most important, the reason why I pull back, and this is, I was dragging it out a little bit, is if the scope comes back, like so, I've got 1-to-1. If the scope goes, I've got 1-to-1. If I pull back and the scope sits there for a brief second and I'm taking back the scope, I've got too much scope in there. Too much scope is then leading me down a path where I can put easily a loop in, or too much scope to cause discomfort. So what my options are is minimise how much scope, and that enables me to go forward. And I try to keep it to that effect. I tend to go about 5-6 centimetres, then pull back about 3. And so you'll find that it's a 2-to-1, and it ends up being that the one for every, it reverses for every 6 centimetres you draw back. You've gone by 3 centimetres, but then it reverses when you actually draw back. You end up pulling back 3 centimetres, and you've maintained a 6
And you
centimetre back.
combine it with suction.
And you combine it, and I pull that down.
More prominent in the transverse colon when you have this kind of lever effect. Well, each time you pull back, you straighten out the colon.
There is a school of thought going around about advancing on the transverse colon, and it doesn't work with the technique I use, but it may work with your technique. Now the idea is we show you principles, and we show you how to do things, but it doesn't mean what you're doing now is wrong. What it might mean is that we need to look at what you're doing, what's comfortable for you, and then get you to adjust your technique slightly to make you more successful. A lot of people at this point would get the patient on the back and put the stiffness on. Is that okay to do at this point? Because what they do is they say it keeps the scope straight to go across the transverse colon. Do you think that's appropriate? Why not? It's just that they think it actually gets you across the transverse colon easier. The reason being is that we've only got about 50 centimetres of scope in. When you actually put the stiffness on, it only takes effect from 45 centimetres backwards. So the actual tip section up to 45 centimetres is still floppy, and that's why I don't do it. If I had a few more centimetres up to say 55 centimetres, then maybe I'd consider it, and that's the most important thing. So even though it is recommended by some people, it doesn't mean that you should be doing it. So you'll read these things and you'll go away and you'll think to yourself, well, some people are doing this, and now I've got the transverse, and that's why I've gone, and that's what I'm going to do. And that's where I'm going to ask you just to think about it. If I was to do it, see, scope, it will go forward. Okay? It's not a problem, but I just don't. And if you look, we come back. Now, to carry on now, we can actually go forward nice and steady. The model will stick a little bit, by the way. And as we go forward, you can see there where we get the transverse. If I actually pull the big wheel back ever so slowly, there is that lag, and then you just put a little bit of anti-clockwise, so I turn, and I can actually turn the scope. Suck, I pause, and then I just draw back, and now I go forward. Now what you'll do now is you'll see the scope start to loop. Okay? Can you see it? So we all thought it was starting to loop, but will that be hepatic? Now if I was actually doing a demonstration at home, what I would do is do this, I'd stand round, I'd pull this, and as I come round here now, I'd pull back and then I'd go forward, and then you're there. And if you look again, and that's only because you use. Now, the other thing that you need to know is, most importantly, we're at the cecum, and the most important thing about the cecum is suck down, suck down, suck down, suck down, suck down, suck down. There's a lot of people out there who will say there is no point in doing torque steering in the cecum. There is no point in doing torque steering in the cecum. No point at all. It doesn't work. That's what they say. I say rubbish. Now we've got to the cecum. Right? Because this, I know that, just ignore that, because how this works is that it comes down to here for the cecum. There is a clip that comes with it, and you should clip it off. Now, if I was to draw back, the scope will come back, and at this point it does that. Remember what we were talking about? Now if we take this off, we just pull the black thing off for me, and we rotate the patient onto the back, and then we take it back. If you notice, I don't grip the scope, I let the scope sit here. The hand's coming back. Some of the gel's just coming out. That's better. And the interesting, can you see the scope? Now the bowel sucks down. But when you suck the bowel down, did you notice what it also did to that side of the bowel? Pulls it down as well. And at this point, what I tend to do is say to the patient, we're there, are you comfortable, everything happy? I look at my scope to make sure I know which is the wheels, I make sure it's neutral, I bring it back, and then I hold the scope. You can see there, we're at about 65 centimetres, and now just release this a little fraction, and then start to take the scope back. This is where you use the big wheel backwards and forward. Now you'll see a lot of movement in this, and that's because the wire in this scope is a little bit lax. Okay? Doesn't mean there's anything wrong. The next thing is how many times did I use the little wheel? Didn't use it. Okay? So we're coming back clockwise, anti-clockwise, clockwise, anti-clockwise. Can you see how we're gripping the scope? That just because I'm holding it like this, I'll get you to hold it properly. This is what suits me. Okay? Anti-clockwise. There, just stepping back. Just come back. See an area that you want to see again. Just take it forward. Have a look. See the fold. How are you going to see behind that fold below us? Advance the scope in a straight line. Big wheel forward ever so slowly. And just take it back. Over we go again. Big wheel forward. Big wheel forward. And we're not over the fold yet. Big wheel forward. Draw it back. And then you can have a look. At this point, if you notice, I'm keeping this finger forward. There's an awful lot of people who put too much air in. A little bit of clockwise torque, draw back, and then you can see as you come down. And just let the torque on and off, on and off, on and off. See the torque, and then you can come back. So that will enable you to see behind the fold. The recommended withdrawal time?
6 minutes.
6 minutes. Oh, you were quick with that, weren't you? Recommended cecal intubation time? Half an hour.
Depends on who's doing it.
As we come back, keep it nice and steady. Can you see how the bowel sits where it is? And then you come into the descending colon now. Nice and steady. Nice and steady. I can go fully anti-clockwise, just to show to you. There you go. Just pull it back. Forward, back. That's done on purpose to show you how it takes it off the torque. Let it come back, let the scope come round. Now, if I see somebody do what I've just done, you know, which is do it very quickly, I'd say to you, whoa, you're going to cause some pain. But did anybody see what happened to the scope? We were at the splenic flexure, and because I put a lot of anti-clockwise torque on, then sucked and pulled back, where did the scope end up? Anti-flexure. And it will do that, it will pull down, it will enable you. There are a couple of things that you need to be aware of. I try to avoid too much scope coming up here into the splenic, because that pushes the diaphragm up and causes respiratory distress. The other thing is that it can cause a lot of discomfort. Sorry, my friend. So as you come back, now, I want you to withdraw the scope nice and steady. Put a glove on, my friend, because it's a bit yucky, tucky, knacky. Now what you need to do for us as you take the scope back is tell us exactly what you're doing. So there's no movement at all that should happen without you saying what you're doing. Is that okay? Now I know that you're a chap who's going to be standing in the room with us, so therefore you need to have this on and get used to it. I'm going to stick this on your belt. So what are you doing? You're actually doing something and you've not told me. So tell me what you're doing.
I'm drying.
Okay, so that isn't telling me what you're doing. Trying to keep the loop. So what are you actually doing? When we ask you to tell us what you're doing, this is going to be the hardest bit now. So what are you actually doing?
I'm withdrawing. I'm withdrawing the scope.
Okay, what else are you doing? You're putting a particular torque on. So when we ask you what you're doing, it is actually say, I'm applying clockwise torque. I'm put this amount on. I've drawn the scope back this amount. So you're breaking. If you remember very early on, you probably thought I was being a bit anal by turning around and saying, I've put it in so far. I've put so much torque on. I've done X, Y, and Z. I've started with my thumb at this position. What that does, it tells the person who's with you what you're doing. So for me, it would be a lot better, because what it would enable me to do is I can step back, and if I'm with you, I actually stand over here so I can actually see what your hands are doing. So what you believe you're doing and what you're actually doing, is that relating to the result what you want on there. So I stand back here, I can see your hands, I can see what you're doing there, and I can see there. And you're saying that you're putting clockwise torque on, but you were actually putting anti-clockwise torque on. Ooh, Doc, you just killed me. What did you do?
Bend down.
Sorry, my friend. Oh, Doc, you just killed. How far did you? Oh, hello. Hello. Very quiet, isn't it?
It's not from there.
Are we on? What you did is that you actually drew the scope back by about 12 centimeters.
So what is the recommended distance between anus and your hand?
The optimal distance.
What's the question?
What's
The optimal
recommended?
distance between inward and your hand.
Okay. There is no recommended distance. It's a bit like saying, should you be taking 2 paracetamol a day or should you be taking 8 paracetamol a day? There's no. That is what you take to actually alleviate the problem. If you notice, I have the scope back here. He's got the scope here. When you're actually at your stage, you'll find that keeping your hand here enables you to keep the scope at this that stage. That doesn't mean it's wrong. doesn't mean it's right, but it's what's comfortable for you. Okay.
One thing I can add is when you're actually pushing it hard, you realize you're closest to it.
Yeah. And we'll get to that in a moment, because what I want to show you is something else.
And so if you keep that distance, you'll see that you're not, you literally use the
So what are we doing now, my friend? Tell me exactly what you're doing before you do it.
Moving, looking up. Right.
Now, if you freeze, no, that's not freezing. If you freeze, put your thumb back where it was, and put your hand. Now, there are going to be certain terms that we use. All right. Pause. Pause means just chill. Stop means stop whatever you're doing because you're about to cause a problem. And I say freeze. The reason why I say freeze is because everything locks. If I say stop, you know it's actually something in relation to a safety issue. If I say freeze, I just want you to look at something and reflect on something. So I tend to jump between the two. Don't worry if I am sad, Sajida, Bakar, turn around and say stop, because they'll be comfortable with it. So we will say stop, and we will say pause, and all these type of things. Okay? So I've asked you to freeze, okay? And you've moved and you've drifted. The reason why I wanted you to freeze is when you actually did what you did, your thumb was here, your hand was there, and your hand was here. If you look on the screen, you actually have a partial image. If you actually now neutralise the scope, and now draw the scope back, nice and steady, what are you doing? Okay. Well, what else? Tell me what you're doing, my friend. Don't do it. Before you do it, tell me what you're doing.
I'm moving.
You're moving. Okay? I'm moving. My lips are moving. I'm dangerous. Watch out. Okay. Tell me exactly what you're doing. Don't do anything until you. I am going to put clockwise talk on. I am going to draw the big wheel back. Okay. So tell us exactly what you're doing.
Clockwise.
Clockwise.
Yeah.
That's fine. What else have you done?
Move clockwise. And then big wheel back. Pulling his scope back.
Okay. Freeze. Look at how you've got your hands. See how that thumb is gripping that scope. Just chill. Just hold it nicely. Have you got children?
No.
You haven't? Oh.
I'm single.
You're single?
Yeah.
I'm not inviting you out. Anybody got children? Children? Yeah. Now, when you hold your baby's hand, do you grip it or do you hold it? Hold it. Think it. Well, in your case, I can't say think it's a baby's hand. Think it's your loved one's hand. You got a loved one? We're finding more about you now, you see.
Big wheel
Okay,
back.
so what are we doing? Ooh, dark. It's the model. It's actually the mannequin, and it sticks a little bit.
Actually, while crossing, removing the scope will affect the ends of
Oh, it will do, because what happens is, as it comes back, the actual bowel's here, and then as you come back, and you're actually pulling along, and then all of a sudden the bowel springs forward as it relaxes. So it does, it resorts to where it should be. And so as you come back here, and then you come around that last fold, it then does that. So you suddenly lose a lot of scope. Don't worry. I always tell people, you've been there once, you can go there again. Yeah. So don't worry about it. So what are you doing, my friend?
Clockwise.
Clockwise? Okay, anything else?
Down. Up.
Well, we're actually coming out now, so would you apply suction on the way out? Okay. If I were, you might